Hey, fellow traveler. Welcome to the Third Eye Awakening podcast, a show where we talk all about spiritual and psychic awakening, magic, the shift from 3D to 5D, star seeds, ascension, multiple timelines, multiple dimensions, the universe, the multiverse, the Akashic records, all the good things. I am your host, Amy Belair, and I'm so glad to have you here with me today. Okay, let's do this. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Third Eye Awakening. Oh, am I excited for this show today? Am I excited? I have for you a conversation with the Sam Tripoli, as if he needs any kind of introduction, because many of you have come to me through Tinfoil Hat, but he is a comedian and the host of multiple podcasts: Tinfoil Hat, Zero, Cash Daddies, Punch Drunk, Broken Simulation, Conspiracy Social Club. Did I miss any?
We can't list them all. We only have an hour, so hit all the good ones. Thank you for having me on, Amy. It means a lot to me. You're a big part of my spiritual awakening. Our conversations have really helped me, focus on certain things that I think are very important spiritually and send me in a wonderful direction that, through these chaotic times have really helped me deal with everything. So, I'm very thankful that you would have me on your show, and I'm sorry that's been kind of chaotic to make it happen, but here we are, and I'm very excited to talk to you.
Here we are. And I mean, that's really what I want to talk to you about anyway, is your spiritual awakening, your spiritual perspective, because I listen to your shows and you are always hosting other people. So I hear these little snippets of your perspective, and a lot of the time I really resonate with it. But I'm so excited to have this opportunity to just let you talk about how you see things and how that perspective has evolved. Like, when did you start awakening? Where are you at now? Just lay it on me.
So that's a really great question. I spent most of my life as a knuckle dragger who, thought there was like there's something bigger going on. I struggled in my career I'm a stand-up comic, and I struggled in my career, and I got lost in drugs and alcohol and sex addiction. And I was in what I know now as like low vibrational activity. And, in recovery, I always talk about in recovery, there's something like they say it's like your lower companions, like, oh, you're hanging out with lower companions. And even back then, I always hated that label because like you're right there with them. Like, you're just participating in low frequency behavior, and thus you're allowing low frequency people who are participating in low frequency behavior in as well. I don't believe there's low frequency people. I think there's just low frequency behavior. And I was doing that for a very long time. And then we get into recovery, and that there's a lot of spirituality in that. So that kind of began the discussion. The big wake up call for me was when I started doing Tinfoil Hat, and I had on two guests. One was Matt LaCroix, who was talking about, all these ancient artifacts and hidden history. And then this one Buddhist monk, this Buddhist journalist named Von Galt, who was saying the exact same thing that Matt LaCroix was saying, but from a spiritual point of view. So I would have like Von Galt and these spiritual people on Tinfoil Hat, and the numbers just weren't there. But I really needed those things. And at that time, Rockfin was like approaching me about doing doing a content exclusive on their website. And I was like, I felt bad about doing a premium content on spirituality, but the world had just imploded with this COVID lies and all that stuff. And my big source of income had just disappeared. So I needed money. So I started Zero, and that's why I met Matt Belair, and then I met Amy Belair. And I'm like, all these Belairs are wonderful people and from Canada. And this journey kind of went on. And like a lot of the discussion that you and I have had really opened my eyes to just like the journey that we're on. And then eventually I get into like the Kabbalion and the Hermetic principles and all that stuff. And through like me discovering this stuff, I've been able to kind of talk to other people who are going through it. And I've heard like wonderful feedback from people about, how they're kind of, like this thing I've learned is like, and I think that you were a big part of this, but it's like, and Von Galt is very big part of this, was this notion that things don't happen to me, they happen for me. And once you take the victimhood out of like your journey, it really allows you to start vibrating on a very higher level. Cause I come from wonderful parents. Not nobody's perfect, wonderful parents. My father, very paranoid person, very much like ingrained that into me. And I'm so thankful for my father. You know, there's a saying in recovery, if you can't be an example, be a warning. And that was my father. And I love him so much. I'm so thankful for him. But I saw myself becoming him. And so this spiritual movement I started doing started really working on like my role in everything and where I am. And like, and this notion that like things don't happen to me, they happen for me. Like Von Galt says, the universe warns you, it warns you, and then it shows you. When you start understanding that, things start to change. So that was a long story there, but that's really where I am today.
Yeah, actually, it was that Von Galt episode that prompted me to reach out to you in the first place because I had been listening to you for a while. My so I was like spiritually awakened for a long time, but I was not conspiratorially, I was like semi-awake. Like I knew that there was like nonsense fuckery around the treatment of First Nations and Native Americans and the education system, things like that. I wasn't, awake like a lot of people are until 2020. And somehow I ended up listening to Tommy G's podcast, No Mercy, that's what it's called. And you were on his podcast, and I was like, I like this guy's energy. And so I started binging your podcast, and I would talk to you in the car while I was driving, talk to you and XG and Johnny. But you're right, it was mostly conspiracy information. And so it was like, it was my crash course to get up to speed and all the stuff that I had not been aware of that was happening here. And then I remember your episode with Von Galt, and I was like, oh, but this is the shit I know. And I remember hearing you really resonate with it. And I was like, I have stuff I have to tell Stam about the star seeds.
That's a big thing too, as well. So, I went on Rogan. I talked about star seeds. I don't know if you heard that, but that was a big thing. And this, like, a hidden history is so important when you realize that, like, they've kept so much about us, and there's like the things they make us fight over. If you look at the Abrahamic religions, it's basically the power ranking of Jesus Christ and all that stuff. And that's all meant to like get us all to fight with each other when they're all saying the same thing. So when you talked about star seeds, that really resonated with me. And the whole thing, again, Von Galt going into like the 1%, how everything is inverted. And then in Buddhism, the 1% can change the masses. And then, how these reptilians or whatever you want to call them, how they've now made you think the 1% is about these powerful people that are in control and you can't do anything about it. Everything is inverted. And when you start to realize that, and we get into conspiracy, but when you really do it right, you always lead to spirituality. And then you start to get to how much of the conspiracy is actually real and how much is it is just loose jacking.
A lot of it, I think, is loose jacking.
So much of it is loose jacking, like this whole like nuclear war. We're on the brink of nuclear war. I'm just not going to put any kind of energy into it. None. I'm not going to believe it. And I just don't. And I start seeing this stuff happening more and more. The economy's going to crash more and more and more. All this stuff, the scarce murder hornets, food shortages, all this stuff, the economy is crashing. It's all loose jacking. And when you like pull yourself out of it, really the world is a beautiful place and life is wonderful. And this interconnection stuff, this again, Von Galt with the Christ consciousness, when you really start to study like Christ consciousness and this understanding of that we're all connected, like that really starts to resonate with me. And then when you hear like you can't change the world, you can only change yourself. And I'm like, well, if we're all connected, if you change yourself, then you change everybody you're connected with. And that's how you start to make the changes. And that starts resonating with me too. It's like, how do you defeat the new world order? You defeat it locally. By locally, you mean yourself. How you change yourself and what you participate in ends up changing those around you. You start to find out, like in stand-up comedy, right? You'll start doing a joke or a new style, and suddenly you'll see it everywhere, and you'll start seeing more and more people doing that because we're all connected and we all start affecting each other. So then you start getting into that spirituality. You start to realize that, like, we live in a haunted house. And once you start realizing that there's these thespians that are here to jack our loose, raise our anxiety so we're manipulated, you really start to understand how much control you have onto your life. So then I had this real, and jump in anytime you want to comment. I could just go forever, but what I had this guy, Birch Driver, come on. And it was a very interesting thing because Birch and I's first interview, we would both agree with you. Neither of us were happy with how we handled it and how it went. And so, like, when Mark, my booker, was like, "Hey, man, Birch wants to come back on," I'm like, "Okay, yeah, man, I didn't handle that well. Let's do it again." And Birch, came on and said something that changed my life. And that was that the model of abundance. And this is you start to study like scarcity versus abundance, which is everything we're talking. And this goes into, Amy, what you were talking to me about, reincarnation, multiple lives, karmic, how we're trying to deal with all these karmic stuff. And like those things just click together in this episode about this thing about just giving stuff away and the scarcity of life, and how the moment we're born, we're just bombarded with this scarcity shit. Like, you're only gonna live so long, you only have so many days, you got to do whatever you can to stay healthy, because if you don't, you're gonna die, and then you're just never come. And like, that is all done to program you to be dependent on them. You gotta take these vaccines. You got to eat this. You got to do this stuff. You got to work this hard, because if you don't work hard, you're gonna be old and you're gonna die, and it's all gonna be. And when in reality, the key is to give it all away.
Mhm.
Whatever you get, you give it away, and when you give it away, it comes back to you tenfold. So I have this story, and this is like it happened in real time. I was driving to a Carl's Jr. because I'm a fat ass, and I saw these two kids on the side of the road, and they look like brothers, and looked like they were in distress. So I'm practicing Mile of Abundance, and I walk up and I see if everything's okay. And they start talking to me, start telling me their story. And the story is that their dad kicked them out of the house because they're gay, and they have to live in a homeless shelter. And they don't, and they have no money, and they have a flat, and they have no way of fixing the flat. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna tow your car. I'm gonna get you a new flat, and I'm gonna give you some cash and send you on your way. So I do that. It ends up costing me about $600. I send them on their way. I check in on them to make sure that they have some adult supervision in their life. And so a week later, I'm at this comedy club called the American Comedy Company, and this owner of this club didn't like me before. It was very obvious he didn't like me. Never expressed it anything but that. But now I'm selling tickets and I'm a commodity. So he has me and my buddy Eddie Bravo back, who's the best. And we do our show and we sell out our show. And so I'm leaving the show, and he runs up to me. He's like, Sam, I got a gift for you. And the dude hands me about $1,300 cash in my hand. He goes, "This is for you and your kids. Congratulations." Like, sometimes it's not that obvious that the universe gives it back to you, but that is like one of the most blatantly obvious examples of that, of the model of abundance. So that's kind of like a big change for me. So every day I do something. I wake up to my best of my ability. I practice law of attraction, law of abundance, love thy neighbor with discipline. There was one more thing that I've been practicing, and it's brand new. I forget what it is, but those are the big ones that I do every day. I practice those every day. Also, the law of causality. Like, I don't worship. I believe in one God, and all outcomes are positive outcomes. Sometimes they're just not the outcome that I believe I wanted, because there's something else going on. So I jumped a lot. I dropped a lot on you. I'm sure there's a lot to unpack there, but that's really where I am spiritually.
I think it's amazing, and I what is extra exciting for me is I feel like we are on our own versions of the same trajectory. Like, there's so much that you're saying that I resonate with in terms of, like, so the first thing is what you were saying about the Christ consciousness. Anybody who's been listening to me for a while is probably sick of hearing me talk about this Christ light frequency, but it's just everything. The farther I go down this path, the more I'm like, this is it though. This is everything. And it's all the things that you were describing, like the model of abundance, but it's not, your heart has to be in the right place where you're like, what is this money anyway? What is this ego gratification thing that I think that I want? I can just give it, but I'm not giving it so that the universe rewards me. I'm giving it because my fellow human is more important to me. And I'll say too though, there is something to be said for like prioritizing ourselves and our family and like taking responsibility for like, not turning ourselves into homeless people because we're giving everything away. I think that that's a potential kind of deception that is laced in there, but it's just sort of coming from that space where I don't know, it's freeing yourself from the need for material gratification or representations of success. And it's hard work, and I have not mastered it, but I feel myself up leveling as I commit to it. And it's an amazing feeling. And also, oh man, yeah, there was a lot to unpack. Also, what you were saying about like the things that happen for us, I think that is the human power. I've recently come to believe that humans in our original blueprint, we're actually the guardians of this realm. And that means the guardians of free will, which is a big deal. That's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, that is.
We've become manipulated and we've kind of made a pretty big mess here through that manipulation process. But what it really means to me is like there are manipulators, there are archons, there are like our mutual friend Brandon Thomas calls them lizard turds.
Yeah.
There is this level of consciousness that desires to gratify itself and maintain like power and control over the masses toward its own ends. And so a lot of things happen that just fucking suck. And it's like a tragedy. It's not okay that it happened. And we have this incredible power to exercise free will and to choose to transmute the shit out of anything that comes our way. We can transmute it back into light. And we don't necessarily do it instantaneously at this point in the human collective consciousness level. It's a process where we live through like the shit of it. It's not a spiritual bypassing thing. It's like living through the grief, the frustration, the regret, the shame, all those, lower frequency states of being. And we keep, working it incrementally up higher, 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 and sort of purifying and clarifying those frequencies into a higher level of consciousness. And I kind of think that that's what Christ consciousness is. It's not like walking around and believing that you're untouchable. It's just knowing that when you have this direct connection with, I don't know, I just call it God source creator or the oneness that is all, and you're connected to that level of light because you're a divine child of that consciousness field, then you have the ability to take like the ugliest things that are here in this realm or the most painful things, most difficult things, and transmute them. Like we are a portal of transmutation, clearing out dense energy patterns. And I feel like when we do this for ourselves, like you said, locally, we're doing this on behalf of the collective. We move a lot of energy on behalf of the collective, and the collective consciousness feels like it is rising to me. Do you see that where you are?
I 100% believe we're winning. And that no matter how much they want to tell us, I think there's a lot going on here, man. You get into ley lines, you're like, and all this stuff, and how like there's a belief that these ley lines, these PowerPoints are like also amplifiers of like energy, which could be positive and negative energy. How nobody's watching news yet. How do we have this understanding about possible nuclear war, famine, high gas prices? There's so much going on with that. There's so much going on with it. Amy, you were a big part of this understanding about when you talked about the Akashic records, your son, and all that stuff, and this understanding of that there's this journey goes on, and and how we're here to kind of deal with some karma from the back, and like that lets me really like be able to deal with when bad things happen to good people and like why that happens. And because sometimes people are on a certain journey and that they have to go through certain things. And a buddy of mine, that I'm not gonna say his name, but he's a good friend of mine. Love him very much. He's really going through it right now. Like he has had a bunch of death in his family, and then someone very close to him has got drunk and got in a drunk driver's accident, killed 3 people. And you're like, well, what is the karma in that? What is the message in that? And it's like, well, if we go back to the universe warning you, then it shows you probably that kid was like drunk driving a lot and like it just caught up with him and like got there, but for the grace of God, go I. But what is the lesson in that? Well, maybe the lesson is like there's a game. Like, and this is another big thing that I've learned through all these books. Like, what is the game? I work with people in recovery, and when they're new in recovery, I see them like kind of have this like, because when you stop polluting yourself with drugs and alcohol, you're really raw with the emotions, right? You're really raw with energy. And like it's hard to deal with like this kind of like getting hit with nuclear energy. Oh, because now you're feeling everything, dude. And how you react to those moments is like it could bring you right back to using drugs again because you can't deal with the energy, so much energy. You want to numb yourself out. And I have conversations with people, and I'm really like, what is the game that's being played right now? How do you play the game? I don't know if you ever had Jessa Reed on your show. Have you ever had Jessa Reed? I think you
Yeah,
guys
I hope to.
I think you guys would have a wonderful conversation. But I remember she came on my show a long, long time ago, and she was talking about like how deep she was into her tweaker psychosis. And she was talking about, she talked to these old ones, and I was like, okay, here we go. And then she's like, they told me that life was all about the game. It's all about this game. And at the time, I was like, okay, that sounds like some tweaker shit to me. But then as I went on in life, I started to realize how true that is. Like how true, like it is all about the game. And this thing that you can't change the game. You have to figure out how to beat the game. And I might be all over the place, but there's so much in our life, man, that like is set when we come here. It's like we got to end racism. Like I think I don't know anybody who likes racism out there. We're constantly told that everyone loves racism. I don't know anybody that likes racism. And racism was here when I was born, and it will most likely be here when I am gone. So, can we end racism? I don't know. I think that's just a subplot in this haunted house, right? This production is this haunted house. So the key isn't how we're going to beat racism. The key is how we're going to get into that system that allows that to hurt me. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like when people are born into like, let's say a ghetto area, right? How many of them make money and stay there? Very few. They make money and they move right out because maybe that area is haunted, right? That is a haunted, some parts of this haunted house are more haunted than others,
Mhm.
whether trauma or whatever it is. That area is super haunted. Your goal is to get out, not to change the haunted house. I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can. And even if a haunted house, let's say Iraq, right? Iraq, so, what the United States did to Iraq is unspeakable. A million lives lost. There is a karma that's going to be paid. But I also know that Genghis Khan, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, when did the exact same thing to Iraq. So the question is Iraq, is that part Mesopotamia and all that? Is there a hauntedness that goes on there? That is part of the haunted house. So what am I getting into here? That there are things that are out of our control. So we have to listen to the universe when it tells us stuff so we can learn how to beat the game, not change the game, but beat the game. And that's a big thing I'm into. What is the game? Me and my girlfriend. What is the game between us? You and your husband. What is the game between you and your employee? This interview, our relationship to our listeners. What is the game? And I have to learn how to win that game, not change the game. You don't change the game. You just don't change. It's there. It's a set rules. In Mario, Super Mario, you don't change the game of Mario. You learn how to beat each level of the game. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I feel like I'm all over the place, but I'm really like this is my big thing. Like What is the game? What is the universe telling me? Like we are every when you see something everywhere in the news, okay, everywhere, be wary of it. If it's everywhere, be wary of it. Ask yourself who gains from this. And the reality is probably the same people, right? The thespians in the haunted house. So everywhere we see now is mental illness, mental health, mental this, mental this. Get on this app, talk to a therapist. Bam, 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 make it as easy as possible. Why is that? Because they want to get you loaded up on pharmaceuticals. And then
Mhm.
what they want to do is to numb you out so you continue on the path that has made you not happy. Sadness, anger, depression, anxiety, all of this stuff is the universe talking to you, telling you you are on the wrong path and you are not happy. And what the pharmaceutical company does is says, take this and continue on your path. And I don't think that's how it works. Now, there are issues. People have chemical imbalances that they do need some help through pharmaceuticals. I'm not judging anybody. I'm not telling you, I'll never tell you what to do. I'm just telling you there's a way to get through everything naturally, spiritually. And that's my humble opinion.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree completely that, same, like, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not gonna pretend that I am and that I'm qualified to tell people what they should and shouldn't do, in order to be in the phase of life that they're in right now. But I do believe that it's a huge red flag that spirituality does not come into the diagnostic process at all whatsoever, and obviously there's a reason, because how do you how do you systematize spirituality, right? And the diagnostic process is systematic. That in and of itself is the red flag. But the point is that if you don't have some kind of spiritual relationship with yourself, if you don't see, yeah, and you're depressed, you have anxiety, you're having, I think a lot of mental illness, like psychosis, schizophrenic episodes, things like that, a lot of it, not necessarily all of it, but a lot of it is people seeing beyond the veil, so to speak, and having absolutely no guidance, no mentorship, no context, no preparation, nothing. So they just like totally feel crazy. They do not know how to navigate it at all. And then we call it mental illness, and you have a problem now forever, and you need to take all this medication. Can I tell you a theory of what I think kind of the setup has been, and one of the next things they're moving everybody into?
Yeah.
Okay. It's gonna, by the time this comes out, I think it's gonna be, like, next week, so it's gonna be a little bit late, but anyway. Okay, it's not too late for you, though. So, this year, I've had this huge resistance to participating in Halloween. Like, I don't want decorations up, I don't know why, I have a 4-year-old, I should be excited about it. And the other night when I was just kind of feeling into it and had my guards down, I got this piece of, I'll just call it like a download. Like it just felt like intel, like sudden clarity that I was like, oh, because this year it's not fun and games anymore. It feels like it's a harvest year. And like this cultural ritual of Halloween that we've been participating in for decades has been fun and games all the way up until now. But somewhere in there, there was this like fine print clause of like, and one year we're going to open portals and come into your world, and we will be received by everybody who has agreed to participate by basically putting up effigies that glorify the demonic realm. And I think this is the year. And what I see in the last 2.5 years is like they've created all of this trauma, all of this confusion, this division, this mental fragmentation. Like they've created mental illness in people through, all the myriad things. And so there are a lot of people have woken up, but there are also a lot of people who are like, like they're just trying to get by and maintain their sense of normalcy, and they are numbing out more than ever. Like the experience of being alive right now is so stressful that a lot of people are kind of like moving out of their body in a way, and they're just kind of hovering around it rather than fully occupying this temple, this beautiful vehicle that they've been granted. And then when we combine that with Halloween, where people decorate the walkway and the front yard and the porch, and They put up, effigies at the thresholds of their doors and their windows, and then inside they have decorations and candles lit and things like that. What I feel coming is probably starting on the 29th, a bunch of portals opening, and they're one-way portals, they're entry portals for those kind of archonic dark entities who are going to kind of like make good on that fine print, that clause, and say, e essentially, because they don't play straight, they don't shoot straight, they're not functioning through integrity. They're just like, "Okay, great, you've prepared your thresholds for me, you've prepared your home. You are dressed up as a ghoul. Perfect. I'm going to just step into your vehicle, and you've already abdicated it because of the stress that we've created over the last couple years." And I feel like they're gonna sit tight and lay low for a couple months. And then I think early in 2023, around the spring equinox, bam, the shit's gonna hit the fan and like something's gonna happen and some false flag, something or other, and people are gonna go crazy. And all of us who are awake, we're just gonna be like, oh my God, holy shit. And we're just gonna have to like witness it and not look away out of a desire for self-preservation, but just like hold the space and hold the frequency and not get pulled down into the chaos that they're creating.
I couldn't agree more. It's all spiritual. This is a spiritual war. It's the only explanation that holds up no matter what. That you don't have to go, yeah, well, I guess, it's like when you do every other thing, like, oh man, they just tried to like figure out COVID and they just tried to make it work and they just got wrong. None of it makes sense at all. The only thing that makes sense is that these people made deals with either the Watchers, the fallen angels, the Anunnaki, whatever you want to call them, made deals and have been playing this game, and they have waged war against humanity. That's what's going on. And I 100% believe that you could be totally right that this like Halloween just ushers in more darkness, more chaos. When I see people walking, somebody sent me, it's very interesting. Somebody sent me something on Instagram of a woman doing a exorcism in like Macy's on a homeless guy. And he put LOL, right? But I watched that and I go, I 100% believe that all these drugs have occult magic in them and they allow these people to be basically what you're talking about, pulled outside their vessel, their machine, and occupied by dark energy. We're seeing on a mass level. That is why they're allowing fentanyl in. Like I've always said this, like, if you take a look at the like COVID and the shutdowns, like everything got shut down except for what? Liquor stores, weed stores, right? Right? Oh, we got supply chain issues. Really? Never heard of a liquor store having empty shelves. Fentanyl's everywhere. It's all being done on purpose.
Totally.
That's all fit into the spiritual warfare that they're doing. So I 100% agree with that. That people are coming and big things are coming. So how do you battle this to me? And for me is like, I'm just blessed. I don't watch the news ever,
Mhm.
ever. I barely watch it on Twitter. I'll retweet a couple things I think are important for people to know, but I don't participate in any of it anymore. It's like, what is happening right here? Does that mean I'm not upset about what's happening in Yemen? I'm totally upset what's happening in Yemen. But I also know maybe Yemen is a part of this haunted house that's meant to be a little more haunted. And like my great grandfather watched his entire family get slaughtered in Armenia during the genocide. And what did he do? He figured out the game and he got out of that area and then moved to Detroit. I'm not saying I'm okay with what's going on in Yemen. I'm not okay what's going on in our inner cities. I'm not okay with that. I think it's wrong. But what if those areas are meant to be like that for people who are here to deal with something from the past and to figure out the game to get out of there? And
Mhm.
that's my humble opinion. And now we have a very interesting thing, and this is kind of another topic, but I'm really into this thing about easy versus simple. And like culture is easy, nature is simple,
Mm.
and culture is the enemy of nature. Culture is group manufactured astroturf, most likely out of a think tank, group think
Mhm.
pushed on the masses versus nature. Stuff is I heard this in AA one time and it really resonated with me. And they were like, getting, being sober is simple, you know, using drugs is hard. But I would flip that into being sober is simple, using drugs is easy. Because what you're trying to do is, in a weird way, get into a meditated state
Yep.
artificially through drugs. So it's very easy. Simple is taking your shoes off, walking, walking on the land, walking the earth, meditating, prayers, right? Easy is the Real Housewives of Orange, blah, 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 pornography, drugs. All this stuff is instantaneous and easy. Simple is like breaking a complex thing down into its smallest, purest form,
Mhm.
which is love, prayer, God, walking the earth, eating right, doing all that stuff, getting away from gluttony, drinking more water, not drinking soda, all that stuff. And that to me is so. I think what we've done here is like these archons have corralled us into these giant cities that are free range reservations. And you could see what they did to the indigenous, you see what they did to the black community. Now they're doing it to middle and lower class white people with fentanyl, heroin, all that stuff. And it's the same game plan: destroy the family unit, make men feel like marginalized, saturate them with drugs and alcohol. It's all the same thing. It's all the same thing. We're not meant to live in these giant cities. We're meant to live on a very local level. We're not meant to be fighting. And people think that in the big city you have more free will. I totally disagree with that. You're bombarded with drugs, alcohol, sex everywhere you go.
Mhm.
Really easy shit. Simple shit is living it out and connecting with your neighbors, connecting with community, having the family structure. Now, if you get divorced, I'm not saying anything that you can still be mom, dad, and child, or dad and child, mom and child. I'm fine with that. I'm not. I think children need love. How they get it is like is I'm okay with all that. But where culture is pushing us to easy, nature pushes us to simple. And when you start to live a more simple life, I think you start to vibrate on a higher level.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most brilliant things that I've ever heard, that distinction between simple and easy. Totally. It's simple isn't necessarily easy, but it's also not necessarily hard. It's just it's the purest essence. Uh,
Pure. It's
mhm,
pure.
mhm. Yeah.
100%.
And I think it's really, oh damn it, it just escaped my brain. There's something that you said that I wanted to. Oh yeah, it was about free will. I think that we totally misunderstand free will. There's a huge misunderstanding around it. And it's like probably our biggest superpower. And I believe like we have a lot. We have manifestation, we have healing, like we have transmutation, we have a lot of superpowers that we have been convinced we don't have and that they're all imaginary. But free will is a really big one because it is making choices, right? Like that's great. Being in the city and being like, "Oh, I have more opportunities, I have more jobs," those kind of things. Um, but the place where free will really matters is at the super granular level where you in the moment, like in the deep presence of any given moment, you feel the very real part of yourself that straddles the dark side. And we all have it. And it's very important that we have it and we acknowledge it, that we are inherently imperfect and our perfection is not required. And this is how we do all the transmutation, is that we have this side of us that if under the right circumstances, could murder somebody, could commit atrocities. And so it's the acknowledgement of feeling the pull of that, and then equally the acknowledgement of feeling the pull into the direction of transmutation, love, unconditional love for ourselves, grace for ourselves, love and grace for others, and choosing at that granular level, deeply in the moment, which one am I leaning towards at any given time? That to me is what free will actually is. And all these choices that are created by culture is just the surface level distraction that hijacks our free will and kind of causes us to get hyper focused on the gratification of, whatever, having a good time. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have a good time,
No, we
but
should totally have good times. Those are blessings.
Mhm. But it's just like that's not actually what free will is. It's like the cherry on top of being here is being
But
able to have joy.
there's a lot of stuff in culture that I am fine with. I'm not saying
Mhm.
they shouldn't be allowed or shouldn't exist. I just know that they bring in certain low frequency energy, and that's okay. You know, I mean, pornography, right? We have a certain view of sex and what sex involves. And pornography is kind of like shining light on that. Now, I think pornography and what it does to the participants and what it does to the people watching it is it lowers their vibrations. But I
Mhm.
also know that our view of sex is why we look at porn stars in a certain way, when in reality, in some weird way, it is like professional sport in a weird way. I know it sounds crazy, but in a weird way. And that some of these girls use this to change their financial like to get out of this haunted house area to that. So that is, I say, as long as you're not hurting anybody, you can do what you want to do, right? You, but I also know that occupation, that way of living, you are letting in low frequency energy, which allows other people participating in the low frequency activity in. You attract your vibration. So you can do whatever you want. I'm never going to say that there's morally correct and there's legally correct, and those are not the same thing all the time. You are legally allowed to do it. And if it changes your trajectory of your family and you find you're able to mentally and deal with it so that you get to a place where eventually maybe you don't have to do it if you don't want to, I am fine with that. But just know you are allowing in low frequency energy, and the people around you can be energy vampires. And you have to
Mhm.
understand that. And that's what we're talking about here is like, you said it right, like this, like, I forget what the word you just said was, but it was perfectly like, I guess along the lines of indulgence. It's like you can indulge in all these. Nobody's saying you can't. And there's moments that it's super fun to do it. But just know, like, if you stay in that place, that is low frequency energy. And you're going to surround yourself with low frequency energy vampires, in my humble opinion. And this goes back to what you're saying, simple versus easy. Simple is pure. And like I really do. There's an old saying, like, you gotta go through it to get to it. That is, I don't know what it is about this realm of consequences, but there seems to be this thing where like you have to go through some shit to get to the good place. You have to go through it. And what do our cultures do? American Idol. Hey, dude, 2 weeks, now you're a giant star. But you know what you didn't do on that way? You learned none of the steps on how to deal with fame, how to treat people, how to do all that stuff. And
Exactly.
now you got all the power and you have no clue how to wield it.
Well, that's why when people are talking about manifestation, like, there's all this sort of like, oh, this excitement about quantum leaps. But to me, quantum leaps are actually the result of a whole bunch of preparation. And a quantum leap that happens without that preparation is just like you said, with somebody suddenly being catapulted into fame, that there was no preparation. They cannot anchor it into, or somebody winning the lottery where the money can't land. It can't land and stay in your field because you have not feathered the nest. You have not like demonstrated to yourself through a series of actions over time that you feel worthy of holding that money and that frequency, that you know how to steward it. Like, if I just magically received $1 million right now, I tell you what, I don't know what. the fuck I would spend it on, but I know I would piss it away because I know that my nervous system is not prepared for it. So quantum leaps are like the result of all this like little incremental progress. It is the same with anything in this realm. This is a realm of process, of application and process. So if you're learning to play the guitar, you're gonna suck, you're gonna suck, you're gonna suck, you're gonna keep at it, you're gonna suck, you're gonna suck, you're gonna get a little bit better marginally. Okay, it's a little bit better, keeping at it, keeping at it. Oh, now I'm getting better. Now I'm really getting better. And then boom, you hit the quantum leap. You hit the threshold where all of a sudden it's integrated into your being and your body, your nervous system has a context for it, and you're not having to think and reach for it now. It becomes like second nature, and eventually it becomes like our nature, not even second nature. I think it works that way with everything in this realm.
I totally agree. You're saying a lot about manifestation, and again, I just think the world is ran by sorcerers. Words are magic,
Mhm,
occult symbolism. It's all there, and when you break it down, it makes so much more sense. And there's no like, well, I guess it just didn't work out, man. These are sorcerers, and they're using magic and sorcery against us. And the
mhm,
best way to push back is to become a Jedi and learn to how to do magic, how to manipulate energy for the positive. And the way to do that is, this is like there is no reality right now. There's no reality. There's only perception. And what you perceive is so what about sports? Sports is part of the haunted house.
mhm,
Okay. Right. It's just part of the haunted house. The reality is like there is no reality. So we get into manifestation, we get into law of attraction. And look what they did with the secret. They tried to make the law of attraction look so stupid because they didn't watch it. Oh, dude, I just think about checks and checks show up. Like that's not how it works.
nope.
That works is dead. Okay. You have to work to it, but you have to like start saying positive things. And I've sat there with people like who are on the verge of suicide. I had a friend of mine who was like, she said like literally she was gonna kill herself in an hour. And then I called her and we were just having this conversation. And I sent her the Kabbalion and I did all this stuff. And we had this real conversation about you have to manipulate the energy around you. You have to change your view of the world. There's a million things going on. What are you focusing on? Is it high vibrational shit or low vibrational shit? Because if you're focused on the low vibrational shit, you're going to start doing low vibrational stuff. If you see that everything is working out, and then if it doesn't work out the way you want, just understand there's another plan that you have to keep going with the flow. You weren't
Mhm,
meant to do that. So that I think that manifestation is a giant part of this. And discipline, going back to kind of going through it to get to it, like discipline is everything. It's why monks go sit on the top of a hill for weeks on end, discipline, 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 pushing through it when you don't want to. That's the difference between, in my humble opinion, the haves and the have nots. And the only reason there's have nots is because they just haven't done it enough to get to where you're talking about these little quantum, these little baby steps to quantum leaps. It's so important. And it's like that's the difference between the haves and the have nots.
mhm. Totally, totally. And the thing is that we have so much power, we have so much agency, and the sorcery that is used against us, it's all to divert our attention from what we're actually able to do and convince us, like you said, that we want easy. We want it easy, that we want to just get it without preparing ourselves for it, but also at the same time making us so busy with work, mortgage, family, kind of the systemic structures that don't actually support us, but they corral us so that we don't feel like we have the time to put in that dedication. But I also want to bring it back quickly before I know I have to let you go is to something that you said the last time we had a conversation on zero, which I thought was like absolute genius, was you were talking about adjusting the variables and how you are being a first responder to yourself. So you're really becoming more, or at the time anyway, which I think was like 6 months ago, that you were becoming more aware of the little fluctuations inside of yourself that tell you that, like, oh, I got too many things scheduled. I need to take a day off, or I got, too much of this going on. I need to drink more water or whatever. And you were really talking about the power of adjusting those variables. And that's also like the Jedi magic of manipulating energy, the energy around us.
100%. Again, that goes into things are happening to us, for us, not to us. And just like this weekend, right? I only did one tinfoil hat and I didn't do a broken sim because I felt I was exhausted and I was overextending myself. And when I do that, I start to let in darkness. I start to let in like doubt. I start to let in depression. I start to let in. It's very, again, it goes back to this thing we're talking about. It's like, I am in, I am a first responder to my problems. When people do drugs, it's because they feel the world is crashing down and they don't want to deal with it. So they try to numb themselves out to it. The problem is that problem starts to grow like Godzilla, and now you got a giant monster. It's not going anywhere. It's just compiling and compounding. It's like, but now I nip it at I go take care of it. First of all, I find my role in it. I accept my role into it, and I apologize for my role into it, and I nip it at the bud. And there's something I learned real quick in recovery, which was like, this is an old AA saying. It's like, should this be said? Should it be said now? Should it be said now by me? Right. And then by the time you get to the third one, the answer is always no. Right. And that to me is very important. Like, what is my role in this stuff? What am I supposed to do? What's the best energetic action to take at this point. And when you start to do that, things start to change. You stop blaming all your power. Like, one of the greatest thing I ever learned in recovery was that nobody's thinking about me. And it sounds like from the outside, that's a very like lonely thing. It's the greatest feeling in the world when you realize there aren't these people conspiring to take me down, that most people are just white knuckling their life. And if they did cause you chaos, it's probably a drive-by shooting, right? They were just spraying everybody and you happen to take some of it. So that takes a lot of you start to real. And you know what's so funny? Man, if I'm sure your listeners do, but if you can ever read the Kabbalion, there's so much said about it. It's like pop culture and you know, but man, there's so much in that. And like one of the biggest things I ever learned was like the law of duality and that everybody is it has good and bad in them, and what you focus on them is tends to how you see them. It's why our politicians, half the country loves them, half the country hates them, because the law of duality, we see what we want to see in them. But man, if you start to realize that they're like people are all good and some people are both good and bad, you can accept them more as human beings and not this whole like idealism of everybody. And when you start to understand that, it starts to it makes it a lot easier to understand that, okay, this guy isn't all evil. He has a lot of good in him. Can I find the good in him that allows me maybe to work with my boss better? Right? Is he an athlete? Well, okay, maybe he's going through something, but what is the good things about this guy? He's gave me a job. I work in a safe environment. If we have problems, he deal like that starts to change the way you look at stuff. And when shit's starting to happen to you, run to it. Don't run from it and allow it to compound. Run to it, nip it at the bud. It's amazing how that just gets done. And you'll be amazed that when you deal with a problem right off the gate, right out the bat, and you talk to people, you'll start to realize that there's a lot of misconceptions going on. And either they had it wrong or you had it wrong. And in reality, you're probably more on the same page than you really understood. And that to me, it's everything is spirituality. Everything is that when you look at it through that, like what is the Kabbalion? What is the game? What is the game? If you learn to play the game, I can't wait to talk to my daughters about this.
Mhm.
Because if they're anything like their daddy, they're going to go to school and there's going to be chaos because there'll probably be some square pegs and round holes. And I'm gonna be like, and I used to think these teachers hated me. In reality, I made their job misery. I was such because I wasn't meant to be in school. I'm meant to be out, explore, and learn. So I can't wait to have this conversation with them. Like, what is the game of life? What is the game between you and these person? If you realize that game, you can master that game and win at that game. And that to me is everything.
And then transmute the game. Like, when you won it, then you can kinda be like, "What game do I wanna create now?
Yes.
Now that I won the one that was, like, pre-set up for me."
100%.
Mhm,
When everybody goes, everybody, when I go, anything is possible. I mean, literally anything is possible. Like, oh, I want to be president. Well, that might be a role in the theater of the haunted house. That may not be the option there. But there's a lot of things you can do, which that can control within yourself. Again, what is the game? That is everything. What is the game? And I have some of my friends who I love. They're the smartest people ever, and they're still into politics and they're this like, I'm like, dude, you're falling for the theatrics.
mhm.
Don't worry about this and that. Change yourself. Christ consciousness, you'll change everybody around you. That's how it goes. That's
Totally. Aw, Sam. I could talk to you forever. I'm so
Andy, we gotta do it more. We need to do it all the time. We need to talk more.
Yeah, I agree, we do, and I just wanna first of all, I wanna recognize that I really believe that you are doing, like, powerful, powerful work in the world. How you have this ability to draw a lot of people in, and a lot of the people in my community now came through you, and they are the best
Yes.
people, and that's you drew them in first. So, I just wanna recognize you for what you're doing, and
Abundance.
yeah, abundance, that's right.
Helping others is the key to everything.
And thank you so much for taking the time to fit me into your schedule. I really appreciate it more than I can say.
Well, I love you very much. A big part of my spiritual awakening, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And I'm only sad it took so long to happen.
But it happened. And Union of the Unwanted, that's the one I forgot. Can't
Yeah.
forget that. It's a panel
Most
show.
powerful conversation on the internet. My favorite, one of my favorite shows to do for sure, dude.
I
It's a very
agree.
powerful show. And that's helped a lot of people too. But give it all away, brother. So I appreciate you, Amy. I know we got a jam, but I'm glad we can make it happen. We have to do it more often.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you. I
Uh,
appreciate you, Amy. Thank
Have
you.
an awesome day, brother.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Hey, my beautiful friend. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Third Eye Awakening. If you like what you heard and you want to go deeper, then head over to my website, amybelair.com, and check out my store, which is full of my past programs, courses, modules, masterclasses, light codes, etc., that are powerful and they are potent and they pack a punch. Not gonna lie, they are here to support you, accelerate you, and activate you in your spiritual awakening and psychic development journey. And slash or if you want to stay in my most current vibey live energy, then I suggest that you head over to the Patreon and join me there. At the lowest tier level, which is only $5 a month, you get a secret bonus episode for every Third Eye Awakening episode that goes out. You also get a weekly energy report and light language activation, and you get a new moon and full moon emancipation transmission. So, those are some fun ways to play, and I'll just remind you that I always have live programs going, so keep your eyes on my website, on my social media, and here on the podcast to find out what is the most current offering that I have. Either way, I love having you in my world, and I hope that I get to meet you and work with you soon.